something, but I wouldn't really call it hearing voices because it's not really. I don't hear it as well as I hear you. You know, it's just
Right.
something that I'm like, did I hear something or am I just tripping?
Yeah, well, if it's anything, just ignore it. You're lucky that you found out about that technology before they started using it on you. Don't ever listen to that shit. It's a dead end road. It's probably just a computer, like a chat bot. It's not actually a person there talking to you. If you ever ignore it. Anyway, but what about you said the stalking, like you mentioned earlier in the call, that you thought the cops might not be a coincidence, giving you a dirty look as you make the phone call. You think maybe getting like people you don't know following you around, or plays, your hand signals, anything like that?
Yeah, I believe that that they probably were seeing me comment on your video, and they know that I was going to go out to they probably have access to my Google account, and they knew that I was going to drive out to make a call, and they probably have access to my phone almost certainly, so they knew exactly where I was, and they want to get it across to me that we can come get you anytime we want. We can do whatever we want to you. They like the subtle, veiled threats way of doing things. So you can't really complain about it. You can't really record them doing it. Even if I recorded it, it wouldn't mean anything. But they know that I'm going to take it a certain way. You know what I mean?
Right. And a big part of what they want to do is, other than just simply getting you back to the hospital, it's making you do something violent. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Myron May, the guy who shot up FSU last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was saying that he was getting microwave voices and he was being stalked. And then Aaron Alexis shooting up the Navy again last year said the same thing. He was being followed, hearing voices coming through the walls, microwave weapons.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially because this is the type of stuff that if you tell somebody, they're not going to really believe you. They're going to assume that you're crazy and that, oh, he's just crazy, and we need to put more money into mental health to keep people like this from doing that, and that's how they're going to take it. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. And of course, psychiatry benefits from this technology and this harassment, because if you don't realize that it's real, then you yourself would think that you were crazy and get yourself put in a hospital.
Yeah. And a lot of times when I'm in the psych, go ahead. A lot of times when I'm in the psych ward, they give me like little looks, like little mischievous smirks, like they know that I'm being done wrong, and they're just kind of making fun of me.
Yeah, when I was in the hospital in Vallejo, State Helena, they one time when they injected me with that stuff, it was just for like talking back to one of the staff members. He was like, "Stop talking to me." I was like, "What do you mean stop talking to me?" They don't have you injected. I was like, "What don't have me injected?" Meanwhile, the guys were standing up beside you, the strong arm guys they have there, and they just fight almost. And one of them said, "Yeah, it looks like it's time to put down the dog," and it's just disgusting. And then, like the next day, he was sitting in the hallway. The guy who did that, and I didn't even remember that it was him. Just that it was one of them. And I'm talking to him, and I was like, "Yeah, the guys who work here seem like they're pretty brutal. Like they don't really care about our health. Like yesterday when they injected me with that stuff, one of them said that it looks like it's time to put down the dog." And I'm saying this to the guy who said it, and he's just like, "Oh wow, really?" And he like looked totally like embarrassed and disgusted with himself.
Part of it also is, ever heard of operant conditioning?
Operant conditioning?
Yeah, it's basically this idea by B.F. Skinner, who is a pretty famous psychologist, where you reward and punish people based on whether or not they're following the program.
Yeah. I'm somewhat familiar with that.
It's part of behavior modification, and it's kind of interesting. They even use it on animals like horses and dogs to get them to act a certain way.
Right.
But they have a more complex version, obviously, for people, and it's something that they've been refining for years. The more we go in the future, the better they are going to be at it, and the less hope for humanity really there is.
Yep. So I won't say his name, but your friend in the YouTube comments on your videos, has he been to Fremont as well?
I'm not sure if he's been to Fremont. I think he was probably talking about a hospital where he lives, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Because what you said was the only other example I've heard of anybody mentioning laser lobotomy. When you search that on Google, all you get is some metal song called Laser Lobotomy. Anyways, so what else? What else do you like to talk about in your YouTube videos?
Well, I talk about a lot of the connections between secret societies who have members in different places. It's part of how they watch everything because they have members who are lawyers, members who are doctors. You know, they can violate your HIPAA or your privacy agreements, your confidential. Yes, and members who are in law enforcement, members who are politicians, members who are psychiatrists, and they really have this full kind of 360 bird's eye kind of point of view on things where they can really understand what makes you tick. They have people in Google who work with what's trending and what you've been clicking on and, you know, personalized advertisements, and they understand what you like and don't like. They know how to reward and punish you, and it goes back to that operant conditioning. They know how to push you in the direction they want, you know, really without you even knowing it.
I saw an article a week ago or something that said scientists discovered that they can figure out who you are without your credit card information just based on like 3 or 4 purchases that you make online. They know who you are.
Oh yeah, they're really refining these processes, and you know it's kind of sad. And also they have different options. You know, they can say, okay, we're gonna crack down on this guy with law enforcement, or you know, we're gonna outsource this to a criminal gang or a mafia organization. You know, I was talking about how Sam Giancana in the church committee hearings, I believe it was, he said that the CIA and the mafia are different sides of the same coin, which means
right.
that, you know, one of them does, you know, the dirty work for the you know, the system, and one of them is, you know, kind of the legit knight in shining armor that comes and, you know, tries to make it look good. And the coin itself, it goes back to the bankers. You know, bankers are the ones who funded these pharmaceutical companies, who got them started in the first place. And they're also the ones who, you know, a lot of them are Freemasons and things of that nature, who put the symbols and the symbolism on the dollar bill, on the, you know, the coins, etc.
Of course, the Illuminati, if you will.
Yep.
The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds,
And it's
the J.P. Morgans of the world.
yeah,
Real quick, going back to what you were saying earlier about people, it being hard to make people believe you. It's obviously made to sound crazy. Ever since Edward Snowden went public with the NSA spying, I've found it's incredibly easier to convince people this stuff is going on. Like, people are, it's not even that great. It's just that they'll believe you now, but they'll still be, oh yeah, whatever, that's going on. It's another part of their reality now.
Oh yeah. But with these mental health issue things, it's a little bit more difficult because people are so used to saying, "Oh, that's just crazy," or "He's a crazy conspiracy theorist." You know, there's that, but then there's Snowden, like you said. It's kind of like you've got to really word it carefully. You got to really, you know, understand where the person's at when you relay the information to them.
Yeah, that's why I use a lot of, whenever I talk about the electronic stuff, which was the majority of the harassment I got outside of the physical stalking. I'll give them I think Wikipedia pulled it down very recently, but they had the link on a microwave auditory effect to the weapons, the patents for the weapons, and the military documents talking about the weapons to put voices in the head and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of sources, like legitimate sources in mainstream publications, that if you hit them with a bunch of those in a row, they can't really do it without just denying reality completely. But yeah, of course, it's anything that comes out as soon as you've been in a mental hospital. Have you ever seen the movie Shutter Island?
I don't believe so.
I checked that one out. It's a Leonardo DiCaprio movie about him investigating some Nazi mental hospital, and the ending's really stupid. But there's some great lines in there about that, how it's nobody listens to mental patients, and they're the best interview subjects because they'll talk to you and nobody else believes them. Anyway, Yeah. So definitely check that movie out. But is there anything else you want to talk about before we end the interview?
Oh, just that, when I was at La Selva, which is an outpatient service in Palo Alto, and Palo Alto is also where Stanford University is, and they had the Stanford prison experiment, also called the Zimbardo experiment. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, where the guards ended up acting like guards. They had to cut it short.
Yep. And the room there, ironically, was 420, I believe it was.
Nice.
And anyway, there was this lady there, and she was talking about how the Jews are responsible for the conspiracy, but she didn't really get too much into it when I was there, at the place. She was my counselor, she was a psychologist, and she kind of smiled every time I brought up my beliefs in Illuminati conspiracy. And then later on, I'm going through the internet, and I see this one radio talk show host. I forgot. I think it was Alan Watt or somebody. I forgot. I put the link on your page.
Yeah, that link you gave me was Alan Watt.
And she also she had told me when I was there that, she said to me that she had two grandparents who were 32-degree Masons, and that she would listen to them through the vents and hear what they said. And she said, oh, they're harmless. And she tried to convince me that it was harmless. And then when I heard it on the radio, it said, the daughter of two 32-degree Masons, and she said that she was from Northern California, and I knew it was her because I couldn't forget her voice. I talked to her, probably like 50 times or something, for hour-long sessions, something like that. And so I really got her voice ingrained in my head. I knew it was her.
Yeah.
And again,
now, it's amazing how those synchronicities can happen for some reason, when you research this sort of material. I've had a lot of things like that happen. But that is one area where it's hard to convince people. I don't know how you're going to convince, and not your example specifically, but that is an area where it's hard to convince people when you've got amazing synchronicities happen. Like just the fact that I won't go into it, but yeah, continue.
So I showed my parents and my brothers met them too, and my mom's kind of like a little, she's bad with voices, she's even bad with faces. But my older brother, he said, yeah, it does kind of sound like her. And then I told him, I said, doesn't it make sense that I would know because I've talked to her more than you have? And he agreed that it does make sense, and he agreed that that he believed me. So that that I at least had him believe me, and he was kind of taking their side, that there's taking my parents' side, that there's something wrong with me, but mostly just because there's kind of a sibling rivalry going on, and it's kind of in his best interest to make me look bad.
Yeah, your family and close friends are the hardest people to convince of any of this stuff. It's always the strangers that's easier to convince.
My family just sees me acting angry, and you brought up earlier how you had some kind of psychosis associated with marijuana as one of your, that's what they claimed as one of your diagnoses, right?
Yeah, that's what I got. Luckily, I got my diagnosis reduced to that. I don't believe that that's what happened at all, but I mean, it's better than being diagnosed bipolar or schizoaffective.
That's what pretty much ended up being my diagnosis as well, because I used to smoke pot heavily, and really, to me, that psychosis of marijuana to me doesn't exist at all. It's basically,
right.
Say you're upset and you smoke weed, and then the weed kind of wears off, and you go back to being upset. It's not really the
right.
weed that caused it,
And you're more upset because you're coming off of weed at the same time.
Yep, that's all that is.
Exactly. And if you're smoking heavily, or you're in Northern California, that means you're smoking like the best weed on earth, like the most powerful stuff in the world that's keeping you like completely like sedated, pretty much. And then to come off of that stuff, it's crazy. That's why it doesn't happen that much, because it's so easy to get around here that everybody's just smoking it all the time. So you don't see people like looking like they're losing their minds that much.
Also, another friend of mine brought up is that whenever these celebrities talk crazy, no one ever takes them to the mental hospital, such as Lady Gaga and all these people, right? They can say that they have, an alternate personality when they act or when they perform, and no one says you should go to the hospital because they're in with the in crowd, they're in with the secret societies.
Little Amanda Bynes just been going in and out of the mental hospital, and she said